Rosalind, I love you, my Rosalind, I love you. Come take the thorn from out my heart, my darling. Make me your love slave, my queen.
So my name is Kevin Michael Murphy, and I am coming to you from Harlem, Hamilton Heights section of New York City. And I am a performer and a voice teacher. I run my business called the NYC Vocal Studio, and I'm an adjunct at New York University.
When did you start the NYC Vocal Studio?
So I started the NYC Vocal Studio about 10 years ago. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you, of being a business. And I started it with one of my best friends from grad school. We both were teaching kind of on our own, starting our studios, and we realized that we were getting together once a month to kind of talk shop and be like, how do we do this? And yeah, we just realized that why don't we team up and do this together? And here we are 10 years later, which is
great.
Crazy.
And that's Molly
Nuremberg.
Nuremberg. Okay, she says it the German way.
Yeah.
Kevin Michael Murphy. Let's start about you as a performer. So you were a part of the first national tour of the Book of Mormon?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
That was amazing. So yeah, I was part of the first national tour. So we were the second group of people after the original Broadway cast to kind of mount the show. And we took it around the country. I was with it for the first 2 years, which was amazing. And so Trey Parker and Matt Stone were with us in part of the development, and they kind of, lightning can strike one time, but then when they have to make it strike again, they have to go back to the drawing board. So that was cool to kind of be part of the creative process of being there as they kind of figure out how do we do this show over and over again and kind of make multiple productions. But that was incredible. Just spreading the Book of Mormon around the US and Canada for 2 years. Really great way to see the country.
For those listeners out there who aren't familiar with that kind of tour, how many shows are you actually performing a week, and how much time do you have off?
So 8 shows a week. So like basically Tuesday through Sunday, 2 shows Saturday and 2 shows Sunday, typically. So we call it a 5-show weekend. So Friday night and then 2 Saturdays, 2 Sunday. So that's really like the bulk of our work week. And then we have Mondays off, and then you rinse and repeat. And roughly on this tour, we would be places, usually we were in a city for 2 weeks. So every other Monday would be like a travel day. So we'd be on a bus or in the airport. But we did do some longer sit downs, like LA, we were there for 3 months, Toronto for 6 weeks. So there were some longer sit downs in there, which was nice. But yeah, the sort of like the pick up your stuff, let's go. But it was great because it's like a family in a way that when you're doing a show in New York, you don't get, because everyone goes home to their actual families. But when you're like with people and traveling, you get really close. So
you did that for 2 years. What was the biggest takeaway from that experience?
One, kind of to jump on what you just said, like singers are athletes, especially when you're doing something long term. The other takeaway is that, when you leave, I don't know if this is too dramatic, but like when you leave your home, people, like, the world keeps moving on, but you're on tour and you're kind of like in this bubble. So it's like this interesting like fake world, which is amazing. It has like highs, like you feel like I'm a celebrity one day, and then the next day you're like, oh, this is rough. And I don't know, just an appreciation for the life of a performer, and how exciting it is, but also how hard it can be. And one of my favorite parts is like you would go to the different theaters and people would like sign their names, like, oh, this show had been there and this show had been there, and you like see all the people who had been through these theaters in the past, and you start to sort of see this, I don't know, this like history of shows that have been touring for hundreds of years, and you go back and you can see like, oh wow, I know that person who came through and that person who came through, and it I don't know, it also feels like a theatrical rite of passage.
Yeah.
I have to ask this because you toggle this life of performance and teaching. So what made you want to teach, and how did you become passionate about that?
Well, for one, I come from a family of teachers, so it kind of feels like it's something that's always kind of been in the blood.
Wait,
Um,
teachers too, or
the what?
music teachers as well, or?
No, math teachers actually.
It's true.
That dramatic and wonderful and glitzy world of math.
His
Math,
mom
yeah,
and his
but
brother are math teachers.
or math teachers, yeah, and my sister-in-law teaches English,
Right.
and so yeah, so definitely I feel like teaching has been something that I don't know, it's just I've always kind of been around. But I started music directing first. So when I was in high school, my job was to musical direct the junior high school shows. And that's, I think, where that started for me, of like being on the other side and helping somebody. And so I knew even going into college that that was something that I wanted to do. So I was looking for a Bachelor of Music program, like a music-based musical theater program, because I knew the sort of voice aspect is what I ultimately wanted to at least do as well.
So you started the Facebook private group Exploring Your Expressive Voice. Do you think this is something that stems from the current situation? Do you think that you would have started something like that if the pandemic had not moved us online? And is that something you really want to continue doing post-pandemic, whenever that may be?
Yes, absolutely. Like, and so a big sort of central theme in the work that Molly and I do is around helping people connect to their artistry, connect to who they are as people, to who they are as artists. And that's something I think we've always sort of believed, but when the work goes away, where does singing live in your life when it's not singing to get the job? It kind of highlights like the importance of how singing and expression can make your life better. And so I definitely think that was an impetus for the group, and for a lot of the sort of thinking of like, well, how can we use singing in our daily life to connect to feelings we're feeling, or to be a sense of like self-soothing during a rough year, or to connect and share something with your community or with your family or with your people. So yeah, so definitely I feel like that, I don't know, it gave us the white space to be able to create some new things that is a silver lining, I definitely say.
You make a really interesting point. It's sort of like, what is the purpose of singing for you when you don't have that performance outlet? Or, for some people, as we've discovered with our group, it's different per person. Some people really need that live audience and that energy from the live performance.
Yeah.
And others of us are really making recordings, making music videos, just feeling like you're being heard, or that you're able to share something is enough of that sort of personal need of where singing and music lives in our individual hearts and as artists. I know this has all been really positive about what you guys have been up to during the pandemic, but obviously there have been some challenging times as well. And during those challenging times, how did you yourself stay motivated to keep moving forward, both, personally with your own music career and also with the NYC studios? How did you stay motivated to keep everything moving forward?
So at the like going back to April, so New York City in April was a rough place to be. We were like this epicenter of it all, and it was like you would hear ambulances 24 hours a day just going up and down the street, and it was very dark time. And I think my first response was I sort of went into a place of over functioning. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I was like working out 6 days a week and like making all this new stuff and doing projects. I was like cleaning the house every 5 minutes. Like it was in this sort of mode of like doing all the things.
Okay.
And maybe it was because I was like, if I keep myself busy enough, I won't sort of have to deal with what's going on in the world. I don't know. And then it's interesting. And then also I was getting married. I was planning a wedding in the midst
that's
of
right.
that
Thing, just a little.
So then I like put all my energy into that. And so like for the first like 4 months, I was like doing all the things. Doing all the puzzles, everything.
Wedding was great.
And
wedding was
was the best. And then after the wedding, I like crashed, and then I went into this period of like under functioning where I didn't want to do anything,
Yeah.
where I was just like, I just want to sit on the couch all day long. And so it was this sort of like drastic shift from one extreme to the other. And then, yeah, the process of finding balance between the two, I will say that carving out space to sing for me has been one of the best things.
Mhm.
To be like, okay, like let me just make sure that I have 45 minutes or an hour where I can just go and do that and just be silly and just express and sing things I've always wanted to sing with no end goal per se. And that's been a really great thing. And it's interesting. So my husband sings Indian classical music, and so he'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Limitations for artists can also really, really spark creativity in us to utilize the resources that we have. So how do we think that the digital sphere and all this creativity we've been seeing online, how is that going to change after the pandemic? Do you think it's going to go away as people flock back to the theaters, or do you think it's going to be a permanent fixture for us?
I think it's going to stay, or at least some elements of it are going to stay. And I think one of the things is it's making it more accessible, art more accessible to people. So it's like, I think if you have a sort of online format, tickets or seeing something can be cheaper. So it's a way of reaching more audiences that way. I think also you don't have to be so location dependent. So for example, just the other morning, Anne's sister had a concert from her living room in Binghamton,
Very
and got to watch it, have my Saturday morning coffee and listen to the
Yeah.
concert.
Yeah.
A few weeks prior, I had a friend who was doing a concert downtown Manhattan, like in the venue, and I watched that. So I think even live performance venues might have a streaming option for things.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about, I had thought about people still creating their own content at home, but I hadn't thought about whether theaters will make that a regular option. It makes sense.
Yeah. Because I mean, at the end of the day, capitalism, right? So
Wait, did we get into this industry for money? I have to
right.
that
Well,
memo.
no. But somebody else is gonna try, you know? And so it's like if they can, they'll do it.
Other people will make
Other
money.
people.
The other people.
Right, exactly. The little guy probably won't, but you know. But yeah, I think that will be a piece of it. But also, like, you know, theater companies being able to produce things that large amounts of people can see without having to pay for rental space or various other things. Because New York City, I mean, renting space here is prohibitive, which is why you get commercial things, but you don't always get the most interesting artistic things on the, you know, on the bigger stages. So I think it can allow more voices to be heard, perhaps.
That's a really interesting take on it.
I actually really love that idea
Yeah.
that, you know, that the live performance that will again be a live performance could then just be available to more people.
It's actually an idea that you have this kind of separate support or additional sort of income and reach that then just supports whatever show you're doing, that it can have this sort of duality of being a live performance and having a ton of online content that more people can see or people can rewatch or yeah, that's really cool. That's a very cool perspective. I think we three here agree that arts matter. Do you think that the general public has come to realize that more in the last year, that they have not been able to access live shows?
I think more of the general public has realized that. I think it's something, I think many people take the arts for granted. And it's something that's so ingrained in their lives, even if they don't realize it is. And because of course the first thing we go to is Netflix, or the first thing we go to is listening to our favorite like artists release a new album when times get difficult. So I think some people really have seen the light on that, and the experience that they'll have the first time they're back in a concert hall or a venue or a theater. It's like already I'm getting emotional thinking about it.
No,
you know. I think for many people it's like church, you know, that the experience of a live performance. So I hope so. I hope more people are realizing how powerful and how sort of important the arts are.
As an educator, so now that we've experienced this pandemic, and I dare say the only person who saw this coming was Bill Gates, we were all pretty unprepared. How would you tell your students to prepare, not necessarily for a pandemic, but just essentially, I mean, for a catastrophe of sorts, or backup plans, or how do you want to coach your students to move forward with this?
So the first thing it makes me think of is flexibility. Is being able to be flexible and find new creative ways to do what you do, find new creative ways to make money, understand your skill set and understand what sort of lights your fire and how that can be applicable in many different spheres. Thinking outside the box. I think going into this pandemic, the people who I think struggled the most, and especially I would see this amongst my voice teacher colleagues, very rigid personalities who like don't want anything to change, struggled the longest and the hardest because they were fighting trying to make an apple an orange. So I think that's been a lesson in like, okay, how do we think outside the box? The other thing, I think it has asked a lot of us, like, what does it look like to have a fulfilling life in the arts? What is the big picture? What is the reality of it? The term, like from a practical standpoint, the idea of like parallel careers, like what are things that you can do that still light your fire and still play to your strengths and give you enough energy to make your art? And I think that's an important thing to consider with young artists, to not assume that they're just going to be able to do their art all the time. So like, let's look at the bigger picture. And then also getting more involved in advocacy and standing up for yourself, because the arts community, it's like you need certain protections, or you need the bigger picture to be supporting and uplifting artists. And when they don't, it's like that's a very bad thing. Like, for example, in New York, we have something called the Actors Fund, which is an incredible organization that raises money for anyone in the theater community, not just actors. And this is basically what the Actors Fund was made for, the pandemic. And so organizations like that, organizations like Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, which has been supporting the community. I think it's more important than ever to like support those organizations, and then also bigger in terms of, at least in the US, our government and our city and our state, to make sure that there is support and appreciation for the artists and not just lip service.
Though I feel like those are three hot take. No, I mean, those are really kind of perfect points. You would think we gave you the question in advance, but we really did not. We really did not. Flexibility, having a full life, that isn't just your art, what you do, and advocacy for that's pretty hot take.
Hot take.
You brought up the point about community and community in the arts, and I think that actually is a challenge, because for so long the way the industry has worked really does make us feel as though we are pinned against each other. There's so few jobs and so few roles and so little money that it's every man or woman for themselves, or person. It's every person for themselves. And now through the pandemic, we have seen people coming together to help each other. And one of the other musicians that we worked with is a French soprano. And she said, to be honest, there were no real organizations that would help singers. There was no kind of, the Actors Guild or something. There was no group that would do that. So now a lot of the French classical singers are forming their own community, because they're finding, of course, they have a stronger voice together, no pun intended, but and they're more likely to be heard. They'll have a stronger presence and be able to share a lot more information. So they're developing the online portals where they can share all this information and helping each other. And that's something, who knows how long it would have taken to do that without this, horrible situation. But it's so nice to see people really taking it and making something good out of it.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's super, super exciting. I think a piece that, at least in the Broadway community, we're talking about a lot, is like, what will the world look like after this?
Hmm.
And can the work that we do now, while the lights are down, help shape the world that comes after? And so this sort of pause, how it can lead to a moment of accountability, B, what do systems look like that make the kind of world we want the arts to be a part of in the future? And there's a great organization called the Broadway Advocacy Coalition, which has been leading the charge with that, having sort of town halls and discussions and bringing in casting directors, bringing in stage management, bringing in actors, and really helping us sort of draft a picture of what post-pandemic life will be like.
This interview is actually like, I kind of want to cry.
Oh my God, I was thinking, I was feeling a little bit teary-eyed too.
No, but you've made me feel so much more positive about coming into this. Not that I was already positive, only because I know that I'm stubborn enough to just keep moving forward and trying to make something work, and I'll just keep throwing spaghetti at that wall until something sticks. But it's nice to hear more about what other people are doing, and to know that there is so much happening, that nobody's just sitting by, very few of us are sitting by idly and letting our art die, you know, in this whole process.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a marathon where it's like, okay, you run, or maybe not a marathon, or like a relay race. It's like, okay, you're running right now and I'm resting, and then you're going to rest and I'm going to run. Exactly. And I think at the end of the day, it's like listening to our bodies and listening to ourselves, and like, what do we need right now?
Yeah.
And giving ourselves that, and free of judgment. Because I think this year, if nothing else, has been a lesson in like, self-compassion. Got to get some of that.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Just between us singer friends, as singers, you know, the idea of, or the power behind sharing a song with someone, and how as professionals, sometimes it's like, I don't want to do that, that's my work, or oh God, what will my singer friends think of me putting this out there? Am I going to be judged by Susie and Jimmy? They're the worst.
I hate Susie and Jimmy.
They're the worst. And those sort of feelings that prevent us from sort of sharing our art, versus the power that we have as artists to share something with somebody else, and like thinking of sharing a song as like a gift to another person, another human being, and how that can be a really powerful thing that we can do. It's so easy to feel to feel, not, what's the opposite of empowered? Disempowered? Is that the opposite? Whatever that is.
Yeah, sure.
Powerless. We often feel powerless, I think.
Yeah.
We often feel powerless. And how, I don't know, there's a lot of, I found that sharing a song with somebody can turn their day around, or can make them experience something in a truly meaningful way. And I think that's something that we can do to just make this year a little better, to do that, share it with family, friends.
Share a song.
Absolutely.
I love it.